We are talking about lands and things fixed to the land, like houses. And then you can talk about ships, yachts, airplanes, vehicles of a certain standard. Like, for example, if somebody owns a Land Cruiser, and in Ghana, a Range Rover, it is completely different from a car like Vitz or something like that. Yeah. So when you talk of an asset, you are talking about property of a considerable nature, even if it is not properly defined. Yes.
Why is asset declaration significant, or what impact does it have on government?
Before I answer that, let me add that your liars know that this is what you know at the time of assumption of office. And then the question is, why is it significant? Normally, the fight against corruption found in Article 286 of our Constitution. And then there is a law that has been passed 1998, which you rightly stated, detailing a very long list of holders. Now, corruption, it is not a mere corruption. The second one, people who are going to manage our affairs. The fact that people know that at the time of assuming office, this is what they have. It shows how they can, they can be tracked. Because at the end of the day, it will help people to know the man who declared it by and large, their background. It shows that there is some transparency going on. And that means that it is not a place for people to a very high extent of the people who are going to take up the office. If people know that you are going to be made to declare your assets to a very high extent, coin is that houses as your property, then you to come and explain how and why you had the 3 houses. So it protects you. It's self-protectory to be able to against you, and you are able to refer them to archives that 2 years ago when I assumed the office, this was what I had, and today come and check, it's the same thing. It protects you a lot. Yes.
And if there is a difference,
if there is,
I was a bit surprised when I realized on doing some reading that spousal and dependent assets are also meant to be declared. Is this something that is practiced in our jurisdiction?
It's a very big question that you have asked, because they are supposed to be declared. And I know you will come there, but you have actually brought it up. The problem is that neither the Constitution nor the Act gives the enforcement aspect of it strong teeth. Yeah, and once you don't have strong teeth, it means you cannot declare it. It's inexhaustible. And indeed, the Constitution gives power to Parliament to make more laws with regards to as assets, properties, and liability enforcement. It is stated that, General, there is no mandate public, whether you declared or not. Executive of the Forestry Commission never declared his asset. It's simply because we are not told. In fact, the law does not say that when you refuse to declare, it becomes a criminal matter and you can face the law. Or it is also not stated that the declaration should be published in the official newspapers. It is not there. If you fail to declare, or the Commission on Human Rights and Administration, not like to go to court to file a suit against you. What about, as in the case of Dr. Richard Anani years ago, the government is not interested in prosecuting any of his appointees. So these are some of the problems, very real problems associated with the declaration of assets in Ghana. And certain countries, they make theirs public, and then not only public, it can become a subject for prosecution. Kenya has taken that step. Tanzania has taken that step. And then in the Eastern Asian countries, Singapore and others, China, all those countries, when you declare, even the mode of acquisition of the property you have declared can also be a subject for comment. Because in the case of Ghana, I don't want to blame a leading member of the MPP. He brags that media mewo sikapa. In certain countries, you will be made to tell the public, explain, give details as to how you became Sikani. But in Ghana, somebody can tell you that, oh, I was a shoe shine boy, and today I become this. I was a baba, and then today I was selling cassettes and today have become this. Please, with that prejudice to anybody, in certain jurisdictions, they will make you give account of how a baba became a rich man, so that other people like you and I will also follow, and the young ones coming, so that they will become like you. And if you are not able to explain, that is where your property will be deemed ill-gotten, and then you face the law. Unfortunately for us, or maybe fortunately, so rather let me put it this way, incidentally, in our situation, if you have 100 houses, all that you need to do is to declare the 100 houses, and nobody would ask you why you are not a private legal practitioner. You had 100 houses, nobody was at East Legon. In Ghana, nobody will ask you. The only thing is just to declare, and luckily for you, when you declare, it is a matter between you and the Auditor General only. It is only when you fail to declare that a report can be made to Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. That's the sad aspect of ours.
So there's a lot to unpack when it comes to enforcement and the challenges, the loopholes in mentioned personal property you've like. So person A wants
is that, for example, the president has nominated you or appointed you to a certain position. The law says before you assume office, in fact, at the time the 1992 Constitution came into force, it stated 3 months after the coming into force of this Constitution. But now we are in the year 2025, so that one has become mute completely. Make that list and submit to the Auditor General. That's the way it is.
So before you assume office or before you are sworn in that substantive capacity?
When you are, before, you see, when you are appointed, you cannot start work until you have been sworn in a serial appointment. There are several lines before you review or whatever they call it. For example, if you are to become the head of VRA, ECG, Bank of Ghana, I don't think you necessarily need to be sworn in the civil service, no. But before you assume office, you are required to do it. And when you do not do, then the Auditor General would refer the matter to the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. And that is the part I believe is completely unfair to the people of Ghana. And has official that if you do not portion associated with it. And that is the reason why their father is crying foul and asking them to go for the appropriate declaration. And that is the reason why I believe the newly established Constitutional Review Committee should take that into account, borrowing best practices from certain countries, and in certain countries, and in Africa, certain countries do it. I've mentioned Kenya. Not Africa, certain countries do it. I've mentioned Kenya. Not less efficacious, because all will be like what they will waba. Maybe because all will be like what they will waba. Maybe you stole some money and today you have become a member of parliament. So sensible, very a member of parliament. So sensible, very active. Put have 20 house in Ghana. How did a junior officer of Bank of Ghana make that 20 houses? In Ghana, nobody will question you. In other jurisdictions, you're supposed to answer how you made that money, whether from an inheritance, from some gifts, or your income. You should be able to tell the people of Ghana.
You can join this conversation. Our WhatsApp number is active 055 55 61034 055 55 61034. What are your questions? We are discussing asset declaration. Some of yours as well. So join the conversation who are expected to declare these assets. Indeed, the law that we are referring to, Act 550, talks about officials, if you are a state-owned financial institution like Bank of if you are a state-owned financial institution like Bank of Ghana, Commercial Bank, ADB, NIB, or Consolidated Bank, doing it. And I'm asking, because you've rightly said that a lot of people do not. If we don't have access to the information because of the confidentiality clause, how do we then hold the people to book, to say you haven't done it, so you have to do it?
We have access to information. We have it. How would they be able to act? So I believe that the only way in which people will be able to act by Auditor General to make whatever statement or the come on before people like you, and I mean the broadcasters. That is what will make people very active and require for more information from sources that otherwise they do not appear in the declaration. So all that we are saying is that it is not too late to amend the law. Luckily for us, it is not easy to amend the Constitution to include a more transparent face of the declaration.
Got these assets that
Yes.
owns these houses that she says she does own, and not anyone else.
You are right. There is a verification process added to the law. Owning a plot of land, and then you are supposed to own it. If it is a vehicle, if it anything that you have, there must be proof of ownership. And as I'm saying, it has the corresponding effect of ADD can use action against you in court, saying that you stole it, you served. If it against you, when these are some of the loopholes. This out that the property that can go to court, that apart from making provision for the ownership, explicit and transparent ownership title to the property, we should publish it so that anybody who has interest in it can attack us. And declaration, they can be under declaration, because as I'm making the declaration to the Auditor General, it can be that I'm declaring only five houses. One security at the castle. This man, Captain Kodeda, that he had an old gramophone which he bought in the 60s, and that was what he was still using, and that was his only asset. If it was jumped against him, that a whole army today, and then having served in that government for so many years, you tell Ghanaians that all that you have was over declaration, because sometimes you can over declare in order to protect certain people, somebody's asset, and that person may be subject to like mine. There's so many things about this law. Something should be done, and it's not late.
It's interesting. The other concern too is the perception that some people to actually ascertain that they do not name, just so it doesn't appear in my books. Is there a way out is there a way to ensure that that doesn't happen in our country?
Implicitly, we have answered that question. You see that in Ghana, you can own property without anybody asking you questions about that. Declare by declared in your name. And for us, nobody, who was convicted, when a case goes to court, becomes public. So when you are giving reference to it, you shouldn't be worried. In the case of that Benjilo, he was convicted for drug dealing. You know that his wife was able to sue the Attorney General and successfully claimed a huge chunk of the property. All that you need to prove is that the property does not belong to the culprit. But in other jurisdictions, you, the spouse of the culprit, would also be made to fight. We don't have that in Ghana. We don't have that in Ghana. Cleaning the teeth, even in America, you will be very...
Dr. Yeah, not different. But here's one. It says, thanks, Doc. Good morning. But my question is, why has it taken such a long time to implement? All leaders in Africa have really done a disservice to our nations, and soon U.S. will auction all foreign properties owned by African leaders. To wait and see, he said he can
assist the person and use this opportunity to clarify something in this country. Do you know that most Ghanaians, about 90% of Ghanaians, are of the view that if you become a president of Ghana, no one can prosecute you. Or even when you leave office, no one can prosecute you. And then 3, those who know you think that they can prosecute you only having left office the next 3 years. In fact, in the law of Ghana, the immunity accorded the president, being a president of Ghana, having been elected by court processes.
We're saying that's happening now. I believe it's in questions about posts that he made. But let's bring it home to us.
Yeah, for us, let us clarify that. First of all, you wait until he leaves office. And in Ghana, it starts from, the 8th January. You understand? 8, which you are supposed to bring just after 3 years. Please, it's a deception. So, his immunity is deferred. Apart from the president, every other person can be brought before justice, as what is happening now. I'm told that an MP was arrested yesterday. So nobody, there is supremacy of the law in the first place. And then two, there is equality before the law. It is only that of a certain president that is deferred. And it is deferred to a day after he has left.
Message, and the contents are quite, and we don't want to get into a legal tussle if you don't have evidence to back your claim. But the enforcement bit appears to be the problem, because financial institutions, as I've said, so Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, GNPC, Ghana Grid Company, Grid Coal, ECG, VRA, Ghana Gas, Bui Power Authority, even the Ghana Health Service, Ghana Education Service, GES, the Scholarship Secretariat, boss also has to declare. So within the corporations, who should declare? It's also another interesting one. And I'm learning a lot of this in the past few weeks. Needs to declare. So take us through that. We know that
they are the same level. Anybody where the state entity, for example, state. But when you go to the shareholding and you see that the stake of the state is such that it has a country superior court judge, superior, and then judicial officers, because on the bench, but your position can be.
Portion of it talks about persons with decision-making powers.
Persons with decision, no. Okay. Persons with that is when you sit on any adjudicative body, like SHRAJ. They do, people at that level, you are supposed to declare. The office of the special prosecutor too.
The OSP.
Yes. As a decision-making power. And then that are you.
Minerals Commission, Forestry Commission, GNPC, confidentiality clause. And the access is restricted. The public has no way of knowing unless a court decides to release that information for one or two reasons.
No.
Okay.
You see, the public may have access to it because it's stated in the Constitution, is black and white, that the statement you give can be the subject of one, a commission of inquiry set up for that purpose, and then two, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative, such that, let me mention the name.
Something that's public, on public record, will take it.
Yeah, it's not offensive to anybody, okay. Even to himself. Our good friend, Mr. Kennedy Japan. You know, he's one person I like. This man who says academy, you understand. And then a 2-bedroom, the matter too. The Commission on Human Rights all set up a committee of inquiry against you. Yes.
Has that ever happened in our country, that someone has declared their assets and for some reason to probe them?
At all. And then they get away. But within constitutional governments, Nkrumah was overthrown. The nation set up the Anijiage Commission of Inquiry to investigate Nkrumah's ministers. And then the Apalu committee, man had got to have anything. And they were withdrawing from his salary. And there was nothing coming from outside. So yes, it has ever happened in our development. There will be a precedent. Yes.
Right. You've mentioned Kenya as one of the countries yes. that have some of these enforcement yes. systems in place yes. that we don't have. Yes. So give us some examples of other countries that we can copy from, because if it exists elsewhere, it should be easy for us to borrow and adopt some of those practices.
In Africa, we know of Kenya, we know of Tanzania, and then we are also beyond our borders. This one is almost in all the Eastern Asian constitutions, and the best examples are Malaysia, Singapore, Western countries. How you got to possess a certain amount, which is now in bank, you will be made to explain. In fact, I can't say much, but I know a client of mine who was living in one of the Western countries, and he said one morning his door was knocked at, the police came in, and they said they've seen from his account that some money was found on our constitution, on the mobile phone review committee. They won't talk to Ghanaians alone. They will also Google. They wouldn't need to go to Westminster to know what's happening there. These are things they should be able to introduce to us. But for us, it doesn't even need to appear in the Constitution. If it needs to be in the Constitution, then it should be in the entrenched portion of the Constitution so that nobody can toy with it. Yes.
So,
and then another thing, in the case of your mandate, So if, for example, your mandate is for 2 years, you declare the first year, and then at the end of the 2 years, you declare. Those who are going to be appointed 4 years, you will be into annual, if not 6 months.
Okay. So,
yes.
So currently you are supposed to, who are the easy in Parliament?
They are supposed to file. And I want it to be every year. Not I mean, for transparency's sake, it should be every easy.
But it only may be part of in that. So if you're able to match your
or gift
expenses,
or legitimate gifts,
or your inheritance,
yes,
then you get you
it
get
means you have been able to explain. Once you are able, the thing is made public, and then it's made periodic, not to make sure that it's fine instead of 4 years. If you are able to, at the end of 4 years, the government that comes to power is not interested in prosecuting you in the first place. Because winning an election in Ghana, not those small things like the declaration of somebody's asset. But when it is made annual, everybody's interest is there. But card, show it as and when.
On the law itself and the call for compliance by his appointees would be in the right vein?
It will be in the right vein if he himself would direct that. Luckily for him, having a majority in Parliament, something has to be done to be mandatory so that a president doesn't need to shout as his children. No, there should be the mechanism in place. You know, one U.S. president to do something, but there must be an institution in existence to compel you to do it. Otherwise, you lose the position that you are going to lead. Completely, you lose it.
And clearly spelled out sanctions for non-compliance.
For non-compliance, and even a process whereby what you have declared would actually be investigated.
Should that be done by the Auditor General, or do you think an independent body should be made to do?
I think if it is an independent body, because several departments, you know, that kind of Ghana, the right to go offend or not, if you go to court giving protection, prompt Ghanaians to come in to say much. Look at the oral, the so-called oral Operation Recover All Loss that the president set up. They had they said, is it 2,000?
Over 2,000.
Over 2,000
messages or information.
Simply because...
People with information.
Yes, simply because people did not, over there, it was not like the police station where you said, do you have evidence? Lead us to that house. Where do you think the person, where did you get your information? This one, you just deliver it and they will process it and send it to a proper office, which will also grind it, and in the end will have result. This is what we should allow people to do. They should be able to report and even prosecute without suffering an outcome, a negative outcome.
It looks like you put some of these more biting and use it. What's your message? Public officials, President tells us, have until March 31st, a deadline which some say...
We must give more teeth to that constitutional lead to a prosecution, especially how you made the property, and then two, how you came by that liability. Official newspaper. And when I say public, for that it will be referred to the Commission on Human Rights, so they can be treated that way. But when you are a public officer, it means you are holding the public purse, and you should be extra accountable.
Telling us about the country's asset declaration law and some of the loopholes which he believes need to be worked on by way of amendment of the law to make the enforcement better and to proffer stiffer punishment for those who do not comply. In the meantime, the March 31 deadline is still looming and public has this morning. Thank you for...